Rogue Radio, now available on Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/Rogue Country. Keep it rogue.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 40 of Into the Van. I can't believe we've made it to 40 episodes. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a weird one this month. It's been super fucking busy, and it's been an interesting one because I've kind of seen the actual real world value of Rogue Country and Into the Van and stuff lately, which has been a trip because we set this up predominantly during lockdown. So we've kind of been, for this podcast, I've been talking into the void. For Rogue Country, yeah, we've had a bit of reaction online. People have been enjoying the radio shows, but we haven't, known if that's actually mattered in the real world. And I was lucky enough to play the Hen House Presents, where I recorded this episode with Brandon, and the praise and kind of the nice words for Rogue Country and Into the Van really, it took me back, man. And I was happy to message Josh and Alex and say, people actually give a shit about what we do, and it's an interesting fucking thing because it's not guaranteed, man. It's not guaranteed that people give a shit about what you do, and it's amazing to actually see something we've tried to put into the world make a positive change, which is what we wanted in the first place. But again, you're screaming into the void until you actually see the real world implications and ramifications of what you do. And it's been a real trip to see Rogue Country do well and have a respect to it, which is what we want. We want to be able to put some artists that we love and respect onto a platform with artists we respect who we don't really know, and get the conversation moving about how great UK artists and UK country and roots is. And I think we're starting to shift the needle, and that is down to all the folks listening and supporting. So thank you so much. Today, this episode, I'm made up. This was the first real world episode since March 13th of last year when I talked to Sean James. That was weirdly the first episode, but the last live podcast, and then everything else has been done through Zoom up until I got to speak to Brandon Ridley. I was made up to talk to Brandon, but before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by my debut album, The Next Life. I'm currently on a run of shows with Cam Cole, the one-man band sensation, and it's been incredible to see the reaction to my songs. And, this is a completely new audience for me. I didn't really expect to get this support and get to be in front of a new audience, and it's been an absolute amazing honor to, it grew from a Liverpool date to then we did Birmingham, then Glasgow sold out on Friday. We're doing Edinburgh. When this podcast drops on Tuesday, we'll be in Edinburgh. And yeah, it's been amazing. And also it's been humbling because I've sold more of my record on this tour than I have in the past year, which just shows how important live music and reaching new people is. So if you do enjoy this podcast, if you do enjoy my music, please recommend it to a friend. I'm going to drop a little teaser in for you now.
I'm not ashamed of where I'm from, but I ain't exactly proud that your mother on the corner, I think we used to hang around. But as I've gotten older, I can't remember now. I forgot on purpose, rest I forgot with time. Goddamn class of '07 wasted you branded lives. I'll make it out if it kills me. I'll see the other side.
And yeah, man, if you aren't there, catch me on the road. I'm in Edinburgh on Tuesday tonight with Cam Cole at Sneaky Pete's. I'm in London for a sold-out show with Ten Sheds and Boss Kane this coming Friday. Then I am playing with Serious Sam Barrett and the Burner Band in Birkenhead, my hometown, on Sunday the 26th of September. And then I'm not doing any gigs until the 16th of October at the Desperado Festival in Crumlin in Wales, because I'm getting married on the 2nd of October and I'm taking some fucking time off because goddamn I need it. It's been a blur since June, and I've been really fortunate that it has been, but now I need a break. Now I need some rest, and I need to spend some time with my wife, which I'm fucking really excited to be able to say. But before that, we've got episode 40 of Into the Van with Brandon Ridley. When I first met Brandon, we both played a show with the Goat Roper Rodeo Band in Liverpool. And let me just check my posters behind me. Yeah. So that was the 22nd of March, 2018. I think there wasn't a full date on that, but I think it was the 2018 date. Yeah, I met Brandon there. He was a great guy. Obviously, when you're kind of supporting people, it's busy. You don't really get to see as much of people as you want. You get to see, obviously, them play, but, you know, you don't really get to talk to them much after the show. Everyone has to shoot off. But I've always respected Brandon's work. This new EP, Senoritas and Sangria, is absolutely phenomenal. I think it takes his sound to a whole new level, and it gives him a real confidence, I think, that I just enjoyed listening to. And I'm so happy that I got to not only see him at Henhouse Presents. Henhouse are a promotion group in Manchester. I had Tanya on one of the first episodes, maybe even in the episode 5s. You know, we talked about creating a scene in Manchester and what Henhouse have done, even just through online stuff with the live streams last year, were phenomenal, and it's created a real community. And this Henhouse Presents gig, I got to see all my friends. I got to see Brandon, I got to see Chris Dover, I got to see Fargo Railroad, I finally got to see Banjo Jen, who I really want on this podcast at some point. But yeah, I finally got to sit down with someone in the actual van and record a podcast. We also recorded a video that's over on the Road Country channel. But yeah, man, without further ado, this is episode 40 of Into the Van with Mike West and Brandon Ridley. Welcome to Into the Van with me, Mike West. Cool. So we are recording, and you were saying, obviously, I'm super high, man. This is the first person-to-person Into the Van I've done since March 13th of 2020.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for doing it. Obviously, we've done the Henhouse Presents today. How did you prepare anything for the stage? How, when you get a show, do you do anything different, or do you prepare yourself in any way for a live gig?
It's been a bit of a weird one because there hasn't really been gigs for so long. So I played here maybe 3-4 weeks ago with the Goat Roper Rodeo Band, and it was interesting because my last sort of live set was sort of obsolete then, and I had a new EP out, and I was really looking forward to playing some songs from that, so I just really focused on them and just sort of hoped that I remembered the old ones as well as I did. I think I got away with it. And then for this one, it's just been a case of putting in an hour a day for sort of 10 days up to practice, and then hoping for the best. But I feel like I did okay.
Yeah, man, you
and
did great.
I really enjoyed it, and it's been lovely to share a stage with some great folks that I haven't managed to share a stage with before, and a few that I have. The Henhouse guys are just amazing at bookings, and they're just really lovely people that really push artists like myself. Over the last year, between them and you guys at Road Country, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now, because you guys have really pushed my name and made me feel really accepted into the scene, which has been really humbling to be a part of.
Well, that's amazing, man, because Henhouse with Tanya and Dawn, it's a completely selfless thing. They're just fans of it. Because I first met them, I think, the same day I met you, and I think that might have been the first time they met you as well, at the Goat Roper gig in Liverpool.
Yeah, at 81 Renshaw. Yeah. So that was the first time I met them, and then funnily enough, I went to see Willie Watson, the king of folk music, and I saw across the room, I was like, I'm sure I recognise them too. And on the way out, they handed me a flyer to a gig I was already playing for them. They just didn't realise I was playing yet. And it was a really nice little interaction. I was like, oh, no way, I think I'm there. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm on the road with the Goats for that run of dates. And they were kind enough to let me use their stage. And they've just been an absolute driving force and constant positivity, which is exactly what this sort of Americana country sort of vibe communities have. Is very positive. Yeah, and it's hard to keep positive as well. I know for the Road Country stuff, when we first set that up, it was kind of in spite and in contradiction to what was already set up.
and there was a lot of things that we didn't like about what was happening, because, like I said on stage before, this scene's still in its infancy. Really, I considered like the country scene in the UK, the modern one, it's only 8 or so years old.
Well, yeah, man, you've got bands that are playing this sort of bubblegum country that Radio 2 will play.
Yeah.
And then for folks like me and yourself and stuff, you can't get any sort of promotion without paying for it. And then for like you guys at Rogue and then Hen House and people like Amelia and John W. Doyle, the Fargo Boys, they've sort of really brought this sort of, I'll share your music and I don't even ask them.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet, and it is just a really humbling experience to meet people like that, enjoy their music and feel like they enjoy yours, because I spent a long time I grew up playing folk clubs, and they're another driving force of positivity, but it's not a world that really communicates with each other very well. And then I sort of hit the pub scene a bit and had a massive culture shock, because I was used to paying to people that would just sit there quietly and listen. And then I got to the pubs and realised there is middle-aged women that are on a hen-do that will scream Ed Sheeran at you really loudly as you're trying to play a Jason Isbell song about cancer.
Yeah.
So it was a massive culture shock. And then I became friends with a band called the Gut Roper Rodeo Band. They were kind enough to take me on tour and record some music for me. And then from that point onwards, I was able to play shows that I enjoyed, that was outside of the folk club scene.
Yeah. And
somewhere that I felt at home.
Yeah.
Which was incredible.
That's an important thing, man. Like, I straight up just refuse to do pub gigs now, because they are just... I sound dead, like, pretentious when I do it, but it is people just wanting covers, and they just want to get pissed. They want a good night out, and that's not what this thing is.
And then I've got friends back home that are like, oh, why don't you come and play this bar? And, you know, they, with all good intentions, to like tag me in things of like local pubs and things wanting musicians, and then they look at me really strange when I'm going, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And they're like, but it's gigs and it's money. And I'm like, yeah, it's a gig and it's money, but it's soul destroying.
It's fucking so soul destroying, man. And it's hard because, like, it is that thing with an acoustic where they just think, you're a singer-songwriter, you can play a pub. Other people with acoustics play a pub. Why don't you do it? And I was trying to get this through to people, and my kind of analogy now is, I'm a genre-specific artist like yourself. You wouldn't ask a black metal band to play a pub.
No.
They're a band with guitars. There are electric, like, rock bands that play pubs, and they do the Kings of Leon songs and shit like that. But you wouldn't ask a black metal band to. I'm a country artist. I'm not going to play somewhere. I know they're just going to be requesting Ed Sheeran and Oasis.
Yeah, I always try and justify it to them as well. I'm like, I'm not in music for money, although it's nice to make money from it, and eventually I'd like to become completely sort of dependent on music as my main income. But there's a difference between a gig and a gig for your career.
Yeah.
And people don't respect that you've got to pay your dues. You've got to do gigs to 5 people, 10 people, then 20 people, support slot after support slot after support slot, to build yourself up to the point where you can sell a room of 20 people on your own. And people don't see that as a success, where it's a massive success. And then, you know, you get to that point and you play some gigs and someone else sort of books you.
Yeah.
And then you want to grow a fan base organically, because if you do it through talent shows and things like that, so many people are like, oh, you got a good voice, you should go on The Voice or The X Factor. And I'm like, no, please stop saying this to me, because although it would be nice to all of a sudden be earning massive amounts of money from my music, I want to be in control of it. I want to write my own songs. I want to play the gigs I want to play. And I want to be here for a long time. I don't want to be a flash in the pan that makes someone else a lot of money to then be thrown aside. I want to enjoy myself, enjoy the ride, and meet the folks along the way. And then when you do meet the folks along the way, you stick together, you support each other. Like, this community really kicks in. And that doesn't go away. Where if you're a flash in the pan, it's, oh, remember him.
Yeah. Oof. But I think that's, like, it's a really important point that loads of people forget with music, and I think one of the things you touched on was, like, paying your dues is 100% something you need to do and something you should do, but a lot of people think just you have to burn through shit gig after shit gig after shit gig, which is all pubs are. If you're trying to like make a name for yourself in a genre or as an actual artist, that's not just a cover band. And cover bands make good money and they do well.
Yeah.
But it's not the type of thing we want to do.
And the thing is, you play 100 pub shows and you play a couple of your own songs in it, you might gain one fan, but you do one badly sold gig to 10 people and you can make 5 loyal fans.
Yeah.
So I'd much prefer to do, say, 20 gigs a year and make 5 fans at each one of them gigs than play 200 and make 2 fans.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's such, like, the best way to do it. But let's go way back, because obviously I know you from, like, supporting the Go Ropes and hanging out with them. What's kind of your origin story, man? When did you first pick up a guitar?
So I started playing guitar when I was really young. I must have been 5 or 6. And my brother had guitar lessons and I was incredibly jealous. He's a few years older than me. And my mum said to his guitar teacher, "Do you think he's old enough?" And he said, "Well, can you get his hands around a guitar neck?" And I could just about do it. So I had a handful of guitar lessons, and then sadly my dad lost his job, so I stopped having guitar lessons. But I had a handful of books, and I'd fallen in love with it, even at such a young age. I was like, this is what I want to do. So I sort of self-taught myself from there, and then growing up then to maybe 13, 14, I started playing in bands. I played bass because no one wanted to be a bass player.
Yeah, everyone always needs a bass player, and there's always a million guitarists, and one guitarist gets picked to be the bassist.
I was in several bands that played loads of Snow Patrol. And my family has its own business, and they were kind enough to let us use their industrial unit on the weekends to practice in. So we had this little safe space where we could knock the hell out of the drums and sing some songs and just have fun. And to be honest, I don't think we ever gigged. I think we did a lot of practicing and never actually gigged. Well, not to my memory anyway. And then I sort of always had acoustic guitars knocking about then, and used to just sort of fiddle, sort of working out songs that I loved. At the time I was really into things like Green Day and Blink-182, things like that, and I didn't really know what country or folk was properly, although I had heard things like Bob Dylan that I hadn't made a connection with it yet. And then I went to my GCSE science exam, and a girl said to me, "Do you want to come and see Green Day tonight?" And I was like, I can go and see Green Day tonight? And my mind was blown, so I rang my mum and I was like, "Mum, I'm going to go see Green Day tonight." And she was like, what, you're on your way to a science exam, what? And I was like, "Mum, Hannah's got a spare ticket, her cousin's dropped out." So Mum, after a little bit of convincing, my mum was like, "Fine, you can go." So I came straight out of the science exam. I can't remember if I did well in it or not. Probably not, because I was just like shaking with excitement. And we got the coach from a town called Abergele, which is where I went to school, to Manchester, and the opening artist was Frank Turner.
Oh yeah?
And then it was Joe and Jet and the Blackhearts.
Oh, no way.
So it was a great lineup.
Fuck.
So I saw Frank Turner, and I was like, whoa, this is... It sort of knocked me sideways, because it was like, it had that sort of punky element that I was into at the time, but I had this whole new thing attached to it. And so I went home and I went on iTunes, downloaded Love Iron Song, and then I listened to that on repeat and on repeat and on repeat till my family hated me. And then from that I went to start seeing Frank Turner live loads, and then met people like Tim Barry, who was originally in a band called Avail. It's like a hardcore punk band over in Virginia. And then it sort of snowballed from there. And then as a weird sort of turn of events, I built a few minis with my family, like classic minis. And me and my brother were on the way home from school one day in the Mini, parked at the little co-op shop down the end of our road, to buy some sweets or something, and this little old boy was stood outside looking at the car, and we come out and we're like, "You okay?" And he was like, "Is this your car?" And like my thought was, "Oh my god, he's like reversed into it or something." And he was like, "Oh, I used to do a lot of work with minis when I was younger, and I've got loads of books about how to modify and maintain them and stuff. Like, you can have them if you want them because they're no good to me anymore." So we're like, "Yeah, well, we only live around the corner." Told him where we lived, and then the next day the doorbell rang. My dad answered the door. There's this little old boy there and went, "Are your kids in?" My dad was like, "Who are you?" And he gave us these books about minis, and I had an acoustic guitar in the hall, and he was like, "Oh, who plays guitar?" And I was like, "Oh, me." And he was like, "Oh, that's an interesting guitar." It was I think it was a Yamaha, but a few years before that I'd been to see Nils Lofgren, and managed to get him to sign it, which was amazing because like growing up, my mum and dad listened to loads of Bruce Springsteen. Like my first concert was a Bruce Springsteen concert, so that was a great experience in itself. So I was talking to him about music, and he said, "Well, you should come to Rill Folk Club." I was living in Rill at the time, and I was like, "What's a folk club?" Because I just had no idea. So he said, "Oh, it's in the bar at the football ground on a Friday night. Come down." So I went down with some friends, and was sort of baffled to why sort of 50 to 80 old blokes just turned up every Friday night, and you just sang 3 songs and everyone listened. And it was the first time I'd been in a crowd where when someone started playing the room went silent, and that like hit me in the chest. It was like, whoa. And I'd never sung at this point. I was quite a shy child, so I started just attending to listen. So I really enjoyed it, and it was interesting hearing story songs that weren't written by Bruce Springsteen. So I sort of made friends with a few guys, a bloke called Kevin and Terry and Richard, and they kept saying, "Oh, you should play, you should play." So eventually I came along and I just played a couple of instrumental tunes. I think from listening to them and a few other things, I'd got into Ben Howard. So I started getting into using really weird tunings and trying to play these tunes, but they were feasible without singing because they were interesting guitar lines. So I'd do like 2 or 3 of them. And then there's this little Scouse man there called Terry, who, God bless him, he's an absolute gem of a human. He would, every week, he would introduce me a lot of the time on stage, and he'd go, "I'm not sure if he's going to sing this week." And eventually I'd sort of gone, "Do you know what, I should do it." And I'd been home and I'd learned Johnny Cash's version of a Bruce Springsteen song, "Further On Up the Road."
Yeah.
So I sort of fumbled my way through that, pretty much talking rather than singing, in a really low register because I was dead shy and conscious of my voice. And the room, like, really, really supported me when I finished it. They went sort of nuts. And I was like, whoa. And that, them being that humbling, although looking back it probably sounded horrendous, the support from them made me want to do it more.
How old were you when you did that?
I must have been about 16.
And how old are you now?
26. So like 10 years ago. So I just started playing more and more folk clubs, and then through the folk clubs I met the Goat Roper Rodeo Band through their dad. His wife was selling vintage western wear, and I really wanted some cowboy boots. So I bought some cowboy boots off Emma, and I went round to their place to pick them up, and Jim from the Goat Ropers come in, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Bam." And he was like, "Oh, do you want to come through to..." They live in a caravan in the back garden. So they sort of invite me around that to the caravan for a cup of tea. So I went and had a cup of tea and a bit of a jam with them. And then it sort of snowballed from there to... They were like, "Well, you're writing songs, you need to record some." And I was like, "But I can't afford to go to a studio," things like that. "No, we record in the caravan. We'll record you." So they made an EP with me called Writing Letters to Himself. That must have been like 2017, 2016, something like that. the 5 or 6 songs, they played on it with me. I couldn't separate singing from playing guitar at the time, so the timing on it's awful. I was sort of learning still, and then I sort of played a few gigs with them and sort of stayed to the folk club scene. And then from that, sort of, I made a record with them, which consisted half of the original EP and half new songs, but no one had really bought the EP, so I didn't feel bad about it. So listening to it, you can tell that some of it's slightly newer recordings than the others, but it was the first thing I was really proud of making. And then they were kind enough to take me out on the road, where I met like people like the Fargo Rail Co. and you, Tanya and Dawn from Hen House, and that sort of brought us up to date pretty much, because just as the wheels really started turning, the pandemic happened.
Yeah, that good old pandemic that ruined everything. But what was the first song that you remember writing that ended up on the EP or the album? What was like the first like time you started actually focusing on your songwriting?
So I started focusing on my songwriting, must have been 18, maybe a bit younger. I wrote a song called, oh god, what's it called? Forgotten Words. Aptly named because I keep forgetting the words. That was literally how I come up with the name of the song, because it doesn't say that in it anywhere. But it was the first thing that I'd written that I connected with, because I'd been writing sort of little bits of songs here and there, and I could hear in them that I was trying to be someone else. So then I wrote this, and it was from personal experiences of witnessing relationships around me where people are seeing that the grass is always greener on the other side. So I wrote that song, and it was the first time I wrote a song and then sort of played it to myself and felt emotional about it. And that really sort of struck something in me. It was like, okay, this is what I do now. So I kept trying to write songs, not necessarily always emotional songs, but just things that resonated with me rather than because I think someone will like it.
Yeah, I think that's always the key, man, because it's, you start, when you first start writing songs, or at least I did, it was, you obviously have all these inspirations that you're drawing from, and you're like, well, I'm just going to try and write a song that like they would sing, and it's like, what do people like? Because you obviously want to be liked when you first start out, and you'd like to be like, no, but it's not that big a deal if you want. But it is that thing where you're just trying to write, not necessarily like a generic one, but you're just trying to get something out that it's like force a round like peg into a square hole.
Yeah, exactly. So then coming forwards to like the release of Mighty Fine Broken Free is, I'd been through a phase where I worked a hell of a lot, and I'd been in a relationship that was really bad for me, and with that relationship we'd started a business together, but I was also working at my family's business. I was working at Sainsbury's, and I was teaching guitar and bass at my local high school, so I was working too much.
Fuck yeah, like that's so many jobs.
Yeah, so, and I sort of burnt out, and I was quite ill as a result of just burning out. And then I sort of realised I'd much rather live a life where I'm poor and happy and free than have a bit of money in the bank. So that's sort of where that title came from. And I sort of wrote a song about it because I was really angry about the way Sainsbury's was running things. So
I worked in Sainsbury's for 6 years, man. I fucking hated it.
So I've only just finished in July. I did 9 years.
Fuck.
And it was soul destroying.
Yeah, man.
But I've met some incredible people there, and I'll be friends with them for life, a lot of them. So there is good things about it. But I wrote a song, I'm struggling to remember the title for it now off the top of my head, but it was basically I don't want to work for the man.
Yeah.
And I'm gladly self-employed now. And I don't think I'll ever be able to get a job again because I haven't got that sort of driving me to do what someone tells me anymore.
Yeah, it's great, man, and it's interesting because Sainsbury's inspired Mighty Fine Broken Free, and that was when I wrote Work On, was during Sainsbury's, because I fucking hated this phrase I always got told, which was think of the money.
Yeah.
Which is the most fucking soul destroying dumb answer. When someone's saying I hate my fucking job and I hate my life, you're like, but it's money, isn't it? And it's like, no, there has to be fucking more to it than that.
Yeah, like as long as I've got clothes on my back, food in my mouth, I've got my dog at home, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
So it's always a bonus when you can come to places like the Veterans Garage here in Manchester and play a show and get some cash for it. And it's really gratifying to just earn money from art.
Yeah.
But it's not the be all and end all.
No.
It's like today it's a charity event, so we're not sort of taking money for our work and just hoping people buy merch. If anyone wants to buy any merch, Brandon Ridley at bandcamp.co.uk or .com.
I'll be putting the links into this as well.
Never remember which way around that is. I've got some new t-shirts that will be going on shortly. I'm just not great.
Yeah.
And haven't done that yet.
I've bought one, and I think Josh, I was messaging him today. And
Yeah,
he said
Josh
he's bought
bought
a t-shirt as
one.
well.
I posted that off, and hopefully that will have got to him today.
Yeah.
And another guy got in touch with me from Instagram, the Cold Hands Gang. Shout out Cold Hands Gang. He bought a shirt, and he's living down south in Buckinghamshire, and he's moving back up north. And we were talking about sort of doing shows together up north. And I told him to get in touch with Tanya and Dawn.
Oh, awesome.
But again, that's just evidence of the community. Like, I've never met this guy. Not entirely sure how he found my music yet. I should probably ask him. But I don't think he's really heard much of my music. But he's taken that time out to message me, buy a t-shirt, support me. And in turn, hopefully, when he's got some music out, I can do the same.
Yeah.
It's just a great little community.
Yeah, and I think the North is kind of starting this thing, because there is obviously like some scenes already happening that we're kind of like the anti version of, but it is like weird how just things connect. Like, obviously this is the first face-to-face podcast I've done in fucking ages, and I'm hyped because everything else has been done through Zoom, and everyone else I've met is through the internet. And when I first started this podcast, I had a rule that was, I'm not going to do an online podcast with someone I've not met in person first.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, and that
You
rule
sort
went
of
out the
had that
window
choice
straight
taken away from you.
So I was lucky enough to get some people in it, but it is this weird little community that, like, and it's hard, man, because sometimes someone's just taking fucking advantage of you.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that piss me off, like, loads. Like, you'll get a message to pre-order their iTunes thing, but they never speak to you any other time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard with the community sometimes, because you'll know yourself. You'll get a friend request with someone with an acoustic guitar as a profile pic, and part of me goes, "What the fuck do you want now?"
Yeah, totally, you do. And then the amount of DMs I get on Instagram that's like, "Hey man, we do similar music. Can you share this?" And I'm like, "Have you shared mine?"
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to share someone's music, and I don't expect them to share mine. But when you get that message and you can feel that it's one-sided within an instant. A great example of the opposite of that is I sold a guitar to a guy called Ashley Sherlock.
Oh yeah.
Do you know Ashley?
Yeah, we did a gig in Heswell a few years ago.
Yeah, so like he's sort of doing mostly as a blues trio rather than a solo artist these days. But he bought a guitar off me, and we just got chatting, and then he said, "Oh, I've released some music, check it out, and I'll check some of yours out." And to this day, like, every once in a while, I'll write a new song, and I want an opinion on it off someone, and I'll just shoot it over to Ash.
Yeah.
And then he's always dead supportive, and he's one of them people that knows how to criticize you without crushing you.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, because you do need that person to say, "Look, if you swap this bit around, it will fit better." And most of the time, people like that are right. But he's been one of them people that's really supported me and shared some of my stuff. I think my latest EP, Senoritas and Sangria, came out the same day as his latest EP. And it was quite nice that sort of in the main push of me trying to push my music, I was able to go check out my friend Ashley's, and he did the same for me. And
Were there any tracks on Senoritas and Sangria that you sent over to him to have a look at or get feedback from?
Yeah, a song called Walking Away. which I wrote sort of smack bang in the middle of the pandemic, and I was sort of witnessing someone I know go through a breakup, and I could tell that they were sort of, they knew it was the right thing, but it felt like the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So I wrote this song, and I really wanted to send it to them, but couldn't because I didn't want to be too personal.
Yeah.
So I sent it to Ashley, and then within 5 minutes he was on FaceTime, and he was like, "Dude, I love it, but in the chorus, if you just bring your voice up on walking away," so from walking away to walking away,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then I was like, that's exactly what I just needed, someone to tell me how to just make that little bit catchy.
Yeah, just to push it a bit more.
Grab that hook on. So that was really lovely. And then he was hoping to be here tonight, but I think work called him in late.
Yeah. Just favour him, flick that light above your head, like directly above your head, and then just slide it along.
Ooh,
Is that
that's
okay?
bright.
Yeah. I just, I couldn't really see her, and it's, again, this is the first time I'm doing this face to face, so it was just slowly the sun was setting, and I was just like, I can't see shit here.
It's a bizarrely beautiful setting here, though.
Yeah, it's...
We're right on the edge of Manchester, on an airfield.
Yeah.
And there's always, when you come here, there's some interesting cars, if anyone's interested in cars, in the car park, and some rich blokes taking their planes for a flight.
Yeah.
And then you go into the veterans garage and it gets all country. It's great.
Yeah. But with Senoritas and Sangrias, when did you first start formulating them songs, or when did you start writing for this EP?
So as soon as I released Mighty Fine Broken Free, I went on tour. So this would have been March 18 or 19, I think. March 19. So I released it February 19. So in the March I went on tour with the Goat Ropers, and the day before the tour I wrote Senoritas and Sangria, and for the first 2 nights I bottled playing it, and then in Edinburgh I finished my set, and I must have been quite nervous because I was in Edinburgh and I'd never been there, and the room was packed. We didn't expect it to be a well-selling gig, because it was the only gig on the tour where we didn't have like a promoter. It was like a self-booking thing, and the room filled up really quick. So I got to the end of the set, and I looked at my watch and I was like, I've got 5 minutes left, what can I do? So I went, bugger it, I'll play a new song, and it went down really well. I mean, the song's gone through some changes since then, but it felt fresh because Mighty Fine Broken Free was a bit of a collection of songs that I'd written over probably about 7 years. So a lot of it didn't feel fresh to me anymore. I'd gigged a lot of it for a long time, even before it was released. So that sort of gave me that little bit of fuel to the fire, if you would. And then from there, I went to a festival in the summer that year, Black Deer Festival. It was a great festival. Sadly got cancelled again this year. But hopefully I'll get back there next year. Haven't played it yet, but been down as a punter a few times, and it's just a really nice festival. And on the way home from that, we had a couple of breakdowns, got a bit of oil on my hat. And then I got back to my dad's house, and he had I think it's a Guild guitar in the kitchen. And I just sat down, and Hey Hey Miss Martha came out, which was very different for me in the way I wrote it. Usually, I always tend to sort of, find some chords and then just sort of mumble my way through something. Right now, mumble my way through and sort of build on it gradually like that. But that one, it was, I think, the first song I ever wrote that I just sat down and it just sort of went, bleh,
Really?
and just sort of came out. And that was quite a jarring experience for me, but I think I'd had a lot of fun that weekend and met a lot of different people from all over the country and the world, and drank far too much whiskey. And I think it was sort of a combination of some bizarre dreams I'd had whilst I was away, and just that sort of constant in a battle of feeling like you're stood in one place and you want to be somewhere else. So it felt very personal, but like it wasn't about me at the same time. And then the other songs come along sort of piece by piece after that over the next sort of year. And I think I finished writing what I intended to be the EP sort of early, sort of round about the time the pandemic kicked in. So there's a song on there, Johnny, which is a song I doubt I'll play live.
Oh, really?
I will play it live in settings like folk clubs and things like that, but generic sort of tour shows, I don't think I will, because it's a slightly long song and it's a slow song, and I always worry about sort of losing a captive audience.
How long is it?
It's probably about 4.5, 5 minutes. So it's not terribly long.
It's not super long. It's not like prog. I thought you were like being like, oh yeah, it's like 9 minutes long, and like I have to change guitars halfway through.
But there's no chorus. It's just it's a ballad, if you would. And that song come about because I played a show with the Goat Ropers, and I sort of stepped outside before my set, and there was just a homeless man in an alley, and I saw, he sort of startled me. I was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And then sort of got speaking to him, and he was telling me about how he ended up homeless, and he'd sort of worked really hard and was in a bad relationship, and then one day something just switched in him and he ran away. And it didn't work out, sadly. But just I found myself thinking about him quite a lot after that, and I ended up writing Johnny. I never got his name, but I thought Johnny fit.
Yeah.
And I tried to sort of imagine a happy ending for him, where so the song goes that like he's working really hard in a steel factory, which is a very northern thing, isn't it? And you know, his wife doesn't love him, they've got a baby on the way, and then he runs away, and then sort of talk about him being in sort of this city and being sort of bewildered by it. And then I like to think that he plucked up the courage to find a way back home, and things worked out. So I sort of wrote that, and I think it's one of the songs I'm most proud of writing, because although it's not strictly true, it's partially true.
Yeah, it's got an element to it. It's got that foundation that I think great songs have.
Yeah, so like as I said, I grew up listening to loads of Bruce Springsteen. So like one of my ultimate goals in songwriting is to write relatable songs.
Yeah.
And I think someone I work near, he's got a factory a few doors down from where I work, said to me once, I love that song The River by Bruce Springsteen, because I feel like it's about my life if my life was different.
That's such an interesting thing to say, because it's hard with songs. Like I think John Prine does it really well, where you're like, oh, this relates to me, but in no way, shape or form, because like everything's different.
Yeah, it's like that song Hello in There by
Yeah.
John Prine, where it's just about growing old and looking back at your old friends. And I listened to that, and although I'm 26, it makes me think about friends I had in school that I've got sort of no idea what they do now, and things like that. And you do sort of take your own personal experience from someone else's vastly different experience.
Yeah. And in one of the songs on your new EP, you mentioned John Prine, isn't it? You reference one at like Blow
That's
Up Your TV,
in
isn't it?
Walking Away. I'm a perpetually single man, and I've always loved John Prine. And then when you're sort of out there and you hear a girl mention John Prine, it sort of makes your ears perk, and you're like, who are you? So that was sort of playing on my mind, because I was at a festival and I heard like a girl talking about John Prine, and I was like, whoa. But yeah, that song's sort of about being perpetually single to a certain extent. That's why I sort of fantasize about like someone sort of flirting with me by talking about John Prine.
It's very niche, but I 100% get it. I just got Blow Up Your TV tattooed on me, because I absolutely adore that song. And it's criminal how many people outside of like the songwriting world know who he is.
Well, that's it. Well, I first heard that song, Spanish Pipe Dream, at Real Folk Club. The old boy I was on about earlier, Terry, he played it one of the first times I went there. And I was just like blown away by that song. I think the same night, a guy called Kevin played Sam Stone. And that was the first time I had heard a song like Sam Stone, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That is insane. Because, you know, when you hear a song and you see it as a movie in your head,
yeah,
it was like that. And I don't think, apart from listening to Bruce Springsteen, but that's Bruce Springsteen, I'd never heard someone play something live and was completely transported to another place.
Yeah, it's hard, man. And did you ever get to see Brian live?
I hadn't.
No, me neither, man. And it sucked because he was meant to do Manchester when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it got cancelled. And I was like, sound, I'll get tickets when it
it
comes
gets rescheduled.
back.
I was lucky to see Chris Christopherson at Black Deer Festival, actually. Although it did sort of break my heart, because I felt like it was just muscle memory for him. I don't think he really knew where he was. And I just felt like management or family or something was just going, we need to get the pennies in whilst we can.
I saw him twice. There was once in 2012 when he was conscious, he knew what he was doing, and his daughter came out and sang some songs with him, and I got to meet him that night.
Amazing.
But the criminal thing is, and I hate admitting it, I didn't know who he was at the time. I knew Whistler from Blades playing the Liverpool Philharmonic. So I was like, I'm going to go down and watch this, because I obviously love the Blade films. So I was like, fuck yeah. I'd listened to, I think I'd heard like the obvious ones, like Me and Bobby McGee.
Yeah.
I was like, alright, I'll go down. And I'd got a ticket that was like the top tier, but I was right on like the seating of it, and it was like the floor, and it was like the seat was on the floor. So you could, and he walked off stage, and I hopped up and like ran downstairs, ran around the back where the tour bus was. And as I got to the tour bus, the side of the stage opened, and he came out, and he still had his guitar on, and his team were like leading him out.
Yeah.
And there was one guy who stopped him and was like, can I get a photo? And managed to get a photo, and then I bought his Feeling Mortal CD.
Yeah.
And it was like, he signed it, and then it was straight in the tour bus, and he only met me and one guy.
Yeah.
I felt so fucking blessed. And then it was like, I listened to that album, which is one of my favourite Christopherson records. And then I saw him at the Glastonbury Festival. Do you know, like, when it was like the BBC like recorded it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was like Margot Price was playing with him and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the same deal as Black Deer, because it was absolutely heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
He just didn't have any clue what was going on.
Out, and you could see it was just like someone would shout, Bobby McGee, and he'd go like straight into...
Yeah. Because I remember Margot Price walked out, and he was like, I don't know what's going on, Margot. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Who's letting this guy out anymore? But then on the last tour he did before he retired, which must have been 2019, he was back. To a point, it was like he had Mel Haggard's band backing him.
Yeah.
And he was conscious, which was really weird, because it was like Lyme disease that fucked him up, wasn't it?
I don't know, to be honest.
Well, I think what I read was everyone thought it was Alzheimer's.
Yeah, that's what I'd have guessed it was.
But apparently it was misdiagnosed, because while he was filming somewhere, he got Lyme disease. And because of his age and things, he got misdiagnosed Alzheimer's and left to just
sort of rot,
wreak havoc on him. And then it was only when it was basically too late that they managed to treat him for it. So it fucking sucks, man. And like, Christopherson is my favourite ever songwriter. I absolutely adore his stuff, and it sucked to see him like that. And I'm gutted that I never got to see John Prine play in Manchester like for that.
I've tried to see Neil Young a few times now, but every time he seems to cancel the tour because someone breaks an arm or something. And it'd be nice to see him, because although he may not sound his best these days, he's still very much Neil Young.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's when when Christopherson announced his last tour, I was like, I just like had the Glastonbury performance in my head. I was like, I don't want to see an old man succumb to dementia on stage.
No.
But then a bigger part of me was like, but it's still Christopherson.
Yeah, it's still like a massive tick on that bucket list.
Yeah. So I went, and I was pleasantly surprised by how like cognizant and how good he was. But yeah, man, that kind of...
It was amazing. Even when he was clearly not well, he sounded phenomenal. And you could tell it was live. There was no smoke and mirrors there. But he's been doing it so long. I think
Yeah.
he doesn't really have to be conscious for it.
No, but that's what I always liked about Kristofferson and Prime, was like they aren't singers in the sense of like
No, they're not
operatic or like
technically-
trained or technically good singers.
Well,
And
it goes like even to more modern artists like Beans on Toast. Like I love Beans on Toast because his songs are so simple but ring so true.
yeah,
And I really enjoyed the podcast you did with him actually.
thank you.
And I've met him a few times. He's played in Chester a few times, which isn't too far from where I live. And I don't think he really enjoys Chester because it gets very rowdy in there. But he's always been really sweet when you meet him. And then, like, his songs, they're just so simple. It's like Watching the World Go By. That song is just... such a simple, beautiful song. Very simple chord structure, very simple melody. But it is just about my life, his life, your life. And that exact sort of shared experience that every single one of us has. So not a single person can listen to that and not relate to it.
Yeah, I think like his voice is what I was trying to say about like Kristofferson and Prime, is their voice aged with them, and it just like gave their songs like another like gravitas to it. And it's interesting to see what will happen with Beans, because his voice is just going to deepen with age and like get world weary, and his songs are going to like
The bizarre thing
have
with
such a
Beans
way
is
with
his voice has got smoother over time.
Yeah.
I think that might be because he's not on the old cocaine anymore, but
maybe.
that, like, particularly on his newest album, Knee Deep in Nostalgia, there's some songs on that where it really goes for his singing, and like it works so well for him, and it's nice to hear him. I don't know if he's just become more and more comfortable singing, so he's not just that drunken idiot stood on a chair in a pub anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I remember I first saw him when he opened for Flog and Molly, and he was walking through the crowd selling CDs, and I bought a CD off him. He like signed
Yeah, he had
it.
like, did he have like a little sort of granny trolley full of CDs and t-shirts? Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
I saw him, the first time I saw him, I think he was opening for Frank Turner in the Manchester Arena, and the bill was Beans on Toast, then Flogging Molly, then Frank Turner. So it was a great night, and I just remember it was sold out and everyone got there early, and I was lucky enough to be pretty much front row. I was, when you're sort of half in the front row, half not. And he played the chicken song.
Yeah, I love that song.
And then there was like 14,000 people doing a chicken impression, and the security guard stood in front of me just looking bewildered, like, how am I dealing with this?
Yeah, man, like, that was like the same thing. He's got such like an approachable, relatable thing, and I know he always comes up to Liverpool to play the Smithdown Festival.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't have much on that day, so I was like, fuck it, I'll go down and see Beans. And he was doing one gig that was just like this tiny little pop-up stage that was literally just on a grass knoll next to this like the greenhouse in Sefton Park, and he was playing like another pub later that night. So I was like, I'll go to the park one first, and I took a book with me, and I was just sat kind of next to the stage. Someone had left a chair there, so I was like, I'm going to sit here, I'm just going to read this book. And he came up to me and thought I was the sound guy, so he was like, are you running this? And I was like, nah man, I'm just here to see you. And he was like, oh. I was like, but do you need a hand with your sound? And he went, yeah please. So I like started setting everything up, and I was like, are you sitting or standing? He was like, are you sure you want the fucking sound guy? I was like, honestly man, I'm not. We did that and watched this gig, and then I was like, alright, I'll see you at Craft later. And I was sat in the pub just like reading me book again, and all I heard was, are you still fucking reading? And he came up and we just fucking hung out and stuff. But he's such a fucking nice guy.
He is. And Bobby Banjo, his banjo player, is also such a lovely bloke. But yeah, that goes back to that community thing in our genre, where it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. If you sort of identify someone, not even necessarily as an artist, but like a fan.
Yeah. Just someone who gives a shit. I always kind of just like, that's my benchmark.
I've been sort of all around the UK and sort of seen people wearing like a Chuck Reagan t-shirt or something, and be like, cool, Chuck Reagan, and you have a little chat with them. Yeah. Where you see some girl wearing a Metallica t-shirt now, you can't go, oh, cool, Metallica, because they go, what?
Yeah.
So like, we have still got such a niche market, but a lovely market.
Yeah, man, it's growing, which is nice, and it's nights like this. Like, I wasn't sure, with it being a charity gig, with it kind of being in Eccles, so it's not really situated or like local to anything. I was interested to see how many people would actually come out, and it's been a really good night, man. It's been really interesting.
It's been a nice turnout, and the crowd's really receptive, which is nice.
Yeah.
They listen, which is good.
Yeah, that's always a bonus.
And Tanya, bless her, with her reserve the right to tell you to shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've seen her having to tell anyone.
No, I think that, because there was one dude talking before she said that, and then I think she basically was just staring at him while she was saying it, and then he hasn't spoken since.
Yeah, so it's been great, and like everyone here, I think pretty much everyone in the room has been like, oh, I really enjoyed your set, man. Where I've played plenty of shows all over where I've had like a handful of people going, oh, great set, man, and then other people just trying to avoid eye contact. As I stand at the merch gun, please buy something. But yeah, and then I've sold a few t-shirts and some CDs, which is always nice. And then I'm really looking forward to the Fargo set, because I've only ever seen them as acoustic, not full band. I played with them in a brewery in Llandudno.
Oh, cool.
With the Goat Rope Rodeo Band again. Going back quite some time. I think I may have had short hair at the time. For any of you long-term people that know me, I had short hair, and then for 5 years I had long hair. Now I've got short hair again. So it must have been about 5 years ago that I was there with them, and like I haven't seen them probably in 3 years, but I walked in today and like, dude, how you doing?
Yeah, they are such a nice bunch of dudes. Like but we're coming up to the hour mark, and obviously we've got shit to do. We can't be like ignoring everyone for too long. But
no, get back
EP's out now. What's the kind of plan going forward with touring and things?
Play as many shows as I can over the next. I don't think I'll do much before Christmas, to be honest. Just because there's so much risk of cancellation at the moment. So I'm sort of looking at booking spring onwards. I've got a few things sort of in the pipeline, but nothing's set in stone yet, so I can't announce it. And then really sort of trying to hit hard with sort of getting out and playing as much as I can, and then using the winter to try and write as much as I can. Sit on that stuff for a while. I'd like to make a full-length record sort of maybe tail end of next year to release the year after. But then go into what we were talking about together before the recording. It's, do you release a full-length record now, or just release a few EPs?
Yeah.
With the way everything's got a battle and algorithm now.
That's the thing, man. I think for me, I'm going to release albums on Bandcamp and physically, because I think it still deserves that format.
Yeah, and you spend so long sort of creating something that you feel flows together, which is always really nice when you sort of step back, listen to it, and you go, I've made something that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you spend so long putting that in a specific order, and then it shoots off to Spotify and someone clicks shuffle. Yeah,
that's the fucking annoying thing, man. I hate people who shuffle albums. But I think I'm going to release everything as an album. The first release date will be Bandcamp and maybe iTunes, because people who have iTunes tend to buy the full albums. And then Spotify, if it's like a 9-track album, I'm going to release a track a month. And just like submit to like the edited playlist.
I've toyed with the idea of I played 2 new songs tonight. Of releasing a single, maybe sort of spring, just as sort of a sort of start hitting the shows again. And then I've got a song from my first full length, Might Find Broken Free, called Light a Spark, which is the song I am single-handedly most proud of writing. And that album didn't get to that many years, so I'm thinking of releasing that as a single with 2 B-sides to it, of these new songs, and then the 2 new songs can still go on an album. And then I've just got that little bit more to sort of spark interest online before the shows. Yeah. So it's not, oh, you've got an EP that came out 9 months ago. Yeah. It's you've got an EP that came out 9 months ago, a handful of new songs, and then sort of tour that as much as I can, and just enjoy the ride. That's
the thing, man. And you've got a converted camper as well, haven't you? So do you tour out of that?
I'm hoping to. I haven't had the chance to yet.
Yeah. Have you got a bed in it and stuff?
Yeah, so awesome. I've nearly finished the conversion. It's dead basic, but it's my little baby.
Yeah.
Call it Martha. And yeah, the idea was convert it so I can tour in it, and then I'm also into rock climbing and paddleboarding, so I've got like an adventure wagon.
Nice. That's the thing, man. Like, this has been absolutely invaluable to touring because you don't have to pay for hotels and shit.
Yeah, you can just close the blinds, go to sleep. Doesn't really matter where you are.
Yeah, because the first tour I went on with a Finnish band, it was the biggest chunk of money just went on hotels.
Well, that's it. Like, I've not been able to afford to really tour properly.
Yeah.
I've been lucky to jump in the van with the goat ropers a few times, but I've seen things sort of come up, and if I try harder, I could have probably got a couple more tours, but it would have been financially sort of not reasonable for me to do that.
Yeah, man. Well, the EP, like, I shit you not, like, obviously I wouldn't have you in here if I didn't respect you, and I really appreciate your music. I really enjoy what you're doing, and I'm hyped to see what you do next, man. Senoritas and Sangria was a phenomenal EP.
Thank you
and
very
you just
much.
killed it live then. I'm looking forward. I'm going to have to bring you up to the world for a show as well.
Yeah, man.
I don't know, we'll
That'd
just
be
push
great.
you as much as we can. But yeah, let's call it there.
Yeah.
We'll go enjoy the rest of the
Thank you so much for having me, and for always being incredibly supportive through road country, or just through telling me that I'm great, because my ego needs a boost every once in a while.
Every now and then, but yeah, man, let's do it.
And that was episode 40 of Into the Van, Into the Bag with the mighty Brandon Ridley. His EP, Senorita and Sangria, is out right now. I urge you to go listen to it. Go give him a follow on Facebook. Go support his music. He is going to be coming back. I'm definitely putting a show on with him, I believe, in January. I can't announce anything yet, but it is going to be fucking incredible. Trust me, if you're a fan of this podcast, if you're a fan of country and roots music, if you're a fan of American country and roots music, I'm going to be announcing a local show in Birkenhead that's going to blow your fucking socks off. Until then, stay safe, keep supporting the things you love, keep listening to the music you love. Please recommend this podcast to a friend, and in the meantime, guys, stay safe. Peace.